Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals inside and out. It's another epi of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you for a lot of bit of the full MSI breakdown. Mere days away from things kicking off in Korea, and I think we're just going to look at tempered expectations, maybe hopes and dreams for the event, go through every squad and kind of say, what will it take to, classify it as a successful event? And let me tell you, it varies quite a bit team to team what that looks like.
Yeah, the easy big brain answer is, of course, to say winning MSI would absolutely be a successful event for everybody. But let's be honest, that's not going to be the result for everybody. So you need to find some middle ground, need to find the right target for your aspirations, for your goals, and where you set yourself up to go towards, and hopefully an achievable one where you can then use that as a stepping stone to further success throughout the summer split. And of course, the World Championship is what you're looking towards. Let's dive into it.
Yeah, and you know what? We'll start with the team where that is the expectation. And I think it's maybe the only team where anything short of winning the entire event, I don't want to say disappointment, but that is the expectation. And that to me is Hanwha Life. That's the easy. You're coming in here as the most dominant team in the LCK. I know they're expecting to win the event, and I think anything short of that will not be deemed a mission success.
I think it's almost equal parts their own responsibility that they are expected to win this event. And I think it's also part of a shared one where, being the number one representative of the LCK, you are expected to win this event. I think that is the ultra combination that leads to them being the only answer that is a mandatory must win event for them coming through here. Yes, it's going to be a little bit until we see them. We got to go through the play-in stage first, of course, but very much so I think the pressure is going to be on Hanwha Life to be a dominant force at this event.
Yeah, and they should be the overall favorites. It's not as big a gap as years where Gen G has completely dominated the entire split, where you're going, am I taking the field or am I taking Gen G? And it's a legit conversation. Hanwha Life's not that far ahead of the squads, below them, but I think, especially with how clearly distant T1 was as a second seed in the head-to-head matchup that was, yes, it was 4 games, but Hanwha Life probably should have won the one game they lost. So you're talking about a 4-0 against T1, which takes me to the expectations for a little-known play-in team like T1. Usually it's, if you don't win the event, it's a disappointment, but I don't think that's necessarily the case with this T1. I think what can be deemed a success, if you lose to Hanwha Life in finals or deep in, that's okay. I think it's a successful event for T1 if they beat the LPL both times or finish ahead of both BLG and Top Esports.
Yeah, I think the bare minimum bar for entry, of course, is going to be getting through that play-in stage.
Well, that's a disaster disappointment if they don't do that.
Yeah, so that's exactly kind of a different, darker territory path that you might go down if you are seeing some questionable performances or variances from T1. But assuming we get the T1 that was able to conquer Gen G and to make their way through to this event, yes, laying it out that pretty much the expectation is that you continue to be the T1 that has been the answer to the LPL and the international stage for arguably the last half decade, even maybe a full decade at this point, the way it has been for the T1 dynasty. That has to be the answer, and it's not going to be an easy one to come through by any expectation. I think still some question marks about Top Esports and exactly what you'll get in that regards, but from BLG, certainly still one of these teams that is absolutely going to be expected to be a top powerhouse at the event, and you better bring your A game if you're T1 aiming to take them down with maybe, again, still some sights set towards Hanwha Life and maybe the whole tournament as a whole.
Yeah, and again, the expectation for T1 beating the LPL, there's quite a precedent for that. Both at MSI, at Worlds, we know Faker is the father of the LPL, and that's why successful tournament is at the bare minimum beating LPL squads, which again is a much higher expectation than most other teams at the event. When you look at those LPL squads, BLG obviously still on the path for that golden road, even though they're, behind Hanwha in terms of favorites for this event. I don't think a successful event is keeping that golden path around and beating Hanwha Life, winning the whole event necessarily. But for me, it's at least beating an LCK team in a best of 5, and I think more so the expectation should be doing that more than once in the event, and that might mean winning the whole event. But if they don't win a best of 5 against either T1 or Hanwha, it's a disappointment.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit easier, a little bit less specific to have to just put it on in the LCK team type of zone as opposed to really zeroing in on T1. But it has to be one of those two pretty much again. That answer needs to be against the LCK. And you need to show it here at this MSI event in order for anybody to really be looking at you as a serious contender come the World Championship. Because that has been the roadblock. Every world championship that has come through, no matter how confident, how powerful a team in the LPL, appears to be, when you've run into the LCK and specifically a T1 organization, you haven't been able to get through that hurdle, and I want to see that hurdle cleared by this BLG team this time around.
It's a hurdle that has plagued them for many iterations of the roster since basically 2013 when they did beat the LCK. That was a very different looking BLG at that 2023 MSI. But the expectations are much higher for them than their LPL brethren in Top Esports. So much so that, Mark, I'm giving Top Esports a checkmark passing grade. All they have to do at this event is not lose to a Western team. That's how much lower the bar is for Top Esports than BLG.
It's a significantly lower bar, but this is where you are at with a squad like Top Esports, and I don't know if this is necessarily representative of who would you, again, it's a little bit wonky due to the positioning and how things are with the LPL, but would you consider them a real threat in the same way as someone that is qualifying for this event in one of those top spots? And I don't think you would. But when you're looking at Top Esports, and yes, laying out the success for this event is not being an embarrassment, not making a mistake on the international stage for the rest of the LPL, that I think has to be the answer for them, and getting a little bit of redemption as far as how things have gone, A, in the past for Top Esports on the international stage, but B, just in recency and trying to put another footnote, something else about this year that you can talk about other than the mess that was the first split and all the bad stuff that went around about that. So very much so an interesting event for the Top Esports boys heading towards them with the opportunity in front of them.
And obviously, 2 international rookies coming in. There's going to be even more question marks for this squad than maybe in years past. But I don't care if they get 3-0'd by BLG, T1, and Hanwha Life. Somehow they lose 3 times. They somehow break the format to be able to do that. But as long as you're beating every Western team, then I think at least LPL fans and I will give them a passing grade. It's just a barely passing to not get a win against any of them, but enough to not be flamed when they return home to China for split number 3. We get to the Western side of things, and similar to Top Esports, I think G2, the expectations and based on how they did at first stand, a successful tournament, or my expectation is beating an Eastern team that's not Top Esports, because they've done that in years past, but competing against the big 3 and maybe even taking a series, that's the high expectations I have for G2.
Yeah, and I think due to some of the instability and, lowered expectations for a Top Esports, if you get that type of win against an Eastern squad, against an LPL squad, that doesn't carry the same weight, the same punching power that it is if it is against a BLG, if it is against a T1, if it is against a Hanwha Life. That is very much so a different story, a different type of caliber that you put into your backpack and say, yep, we got this one to look back on and say that we've accomplished type of thing. That's a different story if you are G2, but that has to be the goal for them, what they already accomplished and showed at the first stand event, how things went throughout the split in the LEC. That is the next order of business for this G2 squad, is taking down one of these top tier teams from the LPL or from the LCK.
And again, the top esports side of things. If it's a different world and Gen G wins first stand and it's top esports, not T1 in the play-in stage, I mean, you're sweating for top esports against Karmine Corp and maybe even an overperforming Team Liquid. That's the difference in strength and expectation for those two squads.
Right. So it's pretty clear that, again, when you can talk about that for top esports, and then you can look on the exact other hand and see the titans of BLG, the Hanwha Life, the T1 in play-ins. Yeah, it's understandable why it's going to be a bit of a different one, but also why a squad like G2 is in this territory where that has to be their type of target at an event like this. And very much so excited to see what they can do at this event and with that as their target site here.
The other EU squad, I think it's unfair to say the expectation for Karmine Corp should be to get out of the play-in stage because they have to beat T1, but I would say you're happy with their performance if they have convincing wins against either both Deep Cross and Team Liquid, depending on how the format plays out. And if you're competitive against T1, and by competitive, I mean either 4 games and at least 2 of those are contested, or you force a decisive 5th game against the defending world champs.
I'm going to be a little bit extra. I'm going to be that one step level more of cutthroat for KC. And I'm going to say it has to be that they get out of this play-in stage, even with a T1 hanging out in there. But that is just simply the requirement for me as far as the path that you have been on where you are growing within the LEC and the power that you have and what your aspirations are outside of just the LEC and where you mean to put some power to your name on the international stage. Getting through a play-in stage, kicking out a T1 would absolutely be the path to do so. As Karmine Corp, they're heading towards this play-in stage as outside of T1, arguably one of the strongest squads in that play-in group and what they could do. So I think it still should be one of these ones where, yes, again, how many times are you going to count on T1 being a play-in caliber team or a team thrown into that type of qualification zone? You're not going to count on it all that often. But the LCK can run just that deep sometimes. And if you are a squad like Karmine Corp and you find yourself in this spot, you got to be able to fight your way out. So I want to see them get through this play-in stage. That is, to me, the successful run for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think no question heading into this, both T1 and KC are main draw caliber teams and don't necessarily deserve to be in play-ins, but this is just kind of how the format is. The Team Liquid side, I'd be shocked if you tell me your expectation is the same for them. For me, I'm looking at only losing to T1 as a success, or, I mean, even beating KC seems unlikely. So beating Deep Cross is the bare minimum for Team Liquid to get a medium check mark. I need, similar to KC, a competitive pushing them to the brink, and then only losing to T1 for okay split or tournament for TL.
Yeah, the kitty gloves come on here for the LCS at this point.
Yeah.
And to handle them in this situation, yes, not going to be as cutthroat with them, and the expectations are certainly not the same for this type of squad. But if they put together their best performance, if they showcase the best iteration of this Team Liquid, a Team Liquid that we have rarely seen, but have seen in the LCS to a small flash, yes, they can be a challenging squad within this play-in tournament and find angles against both or either of Karmine Corp or T1. Now, the expectation is certainly that they won't get to that type of heights or see that type of success against either of Karmine Corp or T1. But the successful event for me, I'll lower it from even competitive squads, a competitive event against T1. I'll take it against Karmine Corp. Let me see you against what has been the runner-up for the LEC or one of the top contending teams in the LEC for the last year and a half, 2 years or so. Let me see that from you, and then we can grade from there if we're Team Liquid.
History is not going to be on their side, though. When the LCS opens up against a squad like T1 for their tournament and likely proceed to get swiftly dumpstered, how's the mental going to bounce back after that? again, history says not well.
Yeah, history is telling me that it doesn't bounce back. There is no bounce back. It's a dodgeball hitting a thumbtack pin, and it just deflates at that point. Is the way that it feels. Hoping that we are wrong about this one for Team Liquid.
The other North American squad, obviously Lyon, already in the main stage. A little bit higher expectations. The bare minimum, I think, should be you can't lose to Furia, and you have to finish higher than Team Secret Wales. That's the baseline to not be disappointed at this event. If you want to surprise and people are calling it a success, you got to beat either G2 or one of the Eastern teams, maybe even just the top esports. But you have to beat somebody that's not the CB LOL or the LCP.
No, I'm going to go that, well, okay, maybe the LCS doesn't only get the kitty gloves treatment, because I'm going that next tier up for this squad that is, again, our number one representative from the LCS, Lyon Gaming. I think that it has to be similar to G2, but they can at very least throw G2 into that pool as well, where they are looking at the squads like BLG, like a Hanwha Life, like T1, and a G2 are the type of tier teams that you need to be able to knock down. Not even top esports getting into that type of level, and that's, again, part of the whole conversation around top esports and where they are as that second representative for the LPL. But very much so what you have seen from G2, from a Hanwha Life, from T1, BLG, those all go into that category of those impressive squads where you can throw your name into that type of tier of that you have taken down. That's another level. That's something that we need to see from Lyon Gaming, frankly, this time around at an international event. And this is a combination of being that number one team from the LCS, how they got here through that run in the LCS, and then as well as looking back as what they did when they represented at first stand and how they disappointed there. So that is the combination of things that leads me to say, nuh-uh, it's got to be that next level, even if you are usually played around with some friendly hands as the LCS.
You know we got a fresh dope of hopium and the tournament hasn't started yet when these are our expectations coming in. But here's hoping Lyon can surprise what most people probably are picturing for them. Because yes, them beating G2 is a big success. G2, if they only beat Lyon, I don't think people are deeming that as a successful run for the champs from Europe. Other three squads, we talk at the highest expectations are Team Secret Wales. And I think even for them beating, let's say if they beat G2 and Lyon, I don't think people are expecting them to take down those big three that we've talked about, but fitting into that middle tier of top esports, G2 and Lyon should be where the sights are for this TSW squad.
Be enough of a disruptor at this event, right? Disrupt the successful events of a Lyon Gaming, of a G2, T1, Hanwha Life, whoever it is, disrupt this event. Be someone that is changing the results of what is expected in this regard, and set yourselves up where you can then start to have different expectations towards a world championship run. I think that is the goal for me with this Team Secret Wales team, is to prove that you can be within the mix of all these guys, that you are able to shuffle the deck enough within these teams that things get interesting, so that when you look towards a world championship type of run, you can start to rely, to count on this type of action, this disruption happening and opening up an angle, opening up a path towards that championship route. I think that is probably the goal here if you are a squad like Team Secret Wales that has shown themselves to be at the very least that type of caliber.
Yeah, can you reach that peak that CFO often had where you were legitimately talking about them as a quarterfinal caliber team at a world championship, which they did in 2025. So let's see if they can reach those highs. The second seed from the LCP, obviously a lot of rookies, a lot of green fully coming into this, and it gets simpler for them in Furia. Deep Cross Gaming, successful event. All it looks like is beating Team Liquid or pushing Karmine Corp to a Game 5. That's it for me.
Yeah, I think you got to be looking just almost even lower at just a pure experience angle for them at this point, right? As far as where you are going, where you want to be going in the next split, and where that growth can be. Just simply experience at this event is going to, I think, frankly, be enough. But yes, if you are able to then maybe look back on this event with extra positive memories of taking down a squad in the play-in stage and whatnot, that type of thing. That has to be the extra cherry on top if you're talking about a Deep Cross here and what they could be looking for.
And finally, we got the Furia side. Obviously, they have a much tougher run because they will not be going in play-ins. They're right in that main stage. And I think for the CB lull for Furia, I mean, the expectations, maybe they should be similar to Lyon Gaming because we've seen the CB lull be at a similar level to North America. But I think, again, it's as simple as being in that stacked top half. Win a best of 5. This isn't like previous MSIs that are, you can get a best of 1 steal in a round robin. This is best of 5s the whole way through, double elim. If Furia wins a best of 5 against pretty much anybody, I think that's a success.
It's almost similar to Team Secret Whales in that sense, where you just be a disruptor. Be someone that changes an expected result on the international stage to set yourself up, where again, you've already done that to the LCS to some type of degree when we look back at the America's Cup situation and whatnot. But then when you look, elsewhere and you look towards going to a world championship, things like that, again, like a Team Secret Whales, if you can establish that you disrupt, that you are the one that changes expected results on the international stage, that can lead you towards, again, having one of these results drop in your favor, finding a way, and then being counted to be able to brawl with one of these squads to keep moving on, staying alive at an event like this. That's, again, my goal for a squad like Furia, who has already shown that they can do that to the LCS. So, Lyon Gaming, be worried. Frankly, triple, quadruple, fingers crossed, Team Liquid, be worried if you're getting on through at that point. But that's a whole other story if we're talking about Team Liquid actually having to play against Furia. But Furia, yes, very much so, look to be that disruptor as well at this event. They're not maybe at the same expectation or quality of disruption that I think Team Secret Whales has proven themselves capable of, but very much so excited to see what they can do and hopeful to see them do it at this event.
If there is a miracle Team Liquid run through the play-in stage, it would absolutely then make sense that they follow up by losing to Furia immediately in that main draw. But I don't think we're going to be heading on that timeline. But that is it today for Liga Unlocked. Eric and Mark here with you, absolute stunners. Thanks for hanging out as always.